Hey guys, before we get started, I just wanted to talk to y'all for a minute about something that's been important and is kind of weighing on me lately. If you don't know, in my real job, I am an acute care nurse practitioner in the intensive care unit here in Colorado. And that means that I've been taking care of COVID-19 patients for a couple of weeks now. And I want to take this opportunity to tell you about a few things that have really been on my heart lately. One, please stay home and social distance. This is not a joke. Don't think that it won't happen to you because you're young. We're seeing patients that essentially have no medical problems being severely impacted by this virus. If you don't need to get out, please don't do so. If you do have to go out to the grocery store to get dog food or do any of those types of errands, please make sure that you're staying at least 6 feet apart from each other. The reason is really important. It's because the air that's coming out of your mouth, the droplets that are coming out, which is a main vector for transmission, can travel about 6 feet, and the air that's coming out can be impacting other people. So if you do go out, make sure that you're staying at least 6 feet apart from each other. Use this time to reconnect with your family, take some time away from social media, and rediscover your children. Take this time to, learn how to cook, or dust off that treadmill, or start a YouTube channel. Second, across the country and all around the world, frontline healthcare workers are running out of personal protective equipment. Thankfully, there's been an overwhelming outpouring by our community here in Colorado, so much so that our hospital now has a donation box in front of the front door so that people from our community can drop off anything that they have. What we need most are N95 masks, plastic disposable gowns, and latex-free or nitrile gloves. If you have the ability, please consider donating to the hospital in your city. We're all in this together, and together we'll get through this. Thanks for hearing me out. Now let's get on to the video. Hey everybody, welcome back. So today is the day that we've been looking forward to for a long time. So hopefully today, by the end of this video, we'll be able to take the 66 Thunderbird out for its first real test drive since about 1988. Now if you remember on the last video, we had some issues with the fuel tank, and we're going to go through it and make sure the fuel system is all ready to go, wrap up a couple of loose ends, and then take it for a test drive. I just want to say a special thank you to all of our viewers out there. This project really seems to have struck a chord with a lot of people because the first video, the Will It Run video, is the most viewed video on our channel. So if you like this type of content, click on that subscribe button. It lets me know that you want to see more of things like this. So enough talking, let's get on to the video. Next, we've got to take off this cover here in the trunk that covers. Coming back around to the bottom of the car, we've got the fuel sending unit and hose, and then there's a J-bolt on either side that needs to come out before we can start to slowly drop this tank down. Alright, so I've got the gas tank loose. Now I went ahead and put a pry bar in between the body and the tank and just kind of gently rocked it until it finally broke loose. So now let's lower this thing down. And we're stopped. Hang on. Alright, so we got the tank out. Let's knock the sending unit out and see if it's any good. That's what I was afraid of. This thing must have been leaking at some point because there's a big patch on the bottom of the tank. For fans of the show Roadkill, you know that every single car that they rescue is foiled by one thing: the cooling system. So just to make sure we don't have any issues when we take this thing back to Memphis on Route 66, I've already put in some radiator flush, and now I'm going to go ahead and replace the thermostat and every hose that I haven't already replaced, including the upper and lower radiator hoses. This thermostat looks like it was sticking a little bit. I noticed a couple of times when I cranked the car up that it wanted to overheat initially. I think it's probably because the thermostat was sticking. Because I can... there it goes. Now it's opening. Regardless, I'm going to replace it. So, you know my rule. No dirty parts back in the car. Let's get this cleaned up. Got the overflow expansion tank all cleaned up again. So let's put the new thermostat in and get it back on the car. Always put the little thing up. Got the new gas tank in today, but unfortunately they sent the wrong sending unit. I mean, this car has one with a low fuel warning light, and they sent one for the car without it. Doesn't matter, so we'll go ahead and get this in. It's easy enough to change and put this in once the tank's in the car. The only thing that stays from the original tank is this little vent tube, and got it cleaned up and blew it out just to make sure that it's still good. And we're going to go ahead and put the tank back in the car now. And that'll be one step closer to getting the car running again. One thing I noticed when taking the old tank out was that the inside of the filler tube here was pretty rusted. It looks like it had some water or something sitting in it. I've just wire brushed this part, but I do want to get the inside before putting this all back together so I don't just put rust right back into it. So what I've got here is the end of a shop vac tube, and I'm just going to pour some evaporust down in there, and this is just a glove holding it on. Alright, so we're just going to let this sit for a few hours, then take it out, clean it off. The filler tube's been sitting in the evaporust for a few hours, and you can see it's pretty clean. I don't know if you can tell that in there, but it's nice. I just need to rinse it off, and then we'll be able to put this guy back in. You know, somebody on one of the forums, I can't remember if it was Vintage Thunderbird or the Ham, brought up a really good point that I hadn't thought about. You know, if the gas tank looked that bad, what about the fuel line? And not really sure how I was going to take a look at it, because on the outside it looks fine, but the outside of the old gas tank looked fine too. But then I thought about it a little further, and if you remember all the way back on episode 1, we had that little bore scope that I picked up on Amazon for like 20 bucks, and I think it will be small enough to at least let us get a little bit of the ways into the fuel line and take a look at it. Okay, here we go, up inside the fuel line. Okay guys, so it's a couple of days later and we finally got the right sending unit in. So let's throw out this garbage and replace it with this. Brand new sending unit with the low fuel warning light. Alright everyone, moment of truth. I put 5 gallons of fuel in the car and we're going to turn the key for the first time. I did go ahead and prime the carburetor again, so it should be ready to roll. Let's see what happens when we turn the key. Fuel gauge is moving. Alright, I think it'll start. Alright everybody, so here's the moment we've been waiting for. We're going to take the 66 Thunderbird out for its first test drive since about 1988. In interest in full disclosure, I did technically drive it once. I backed it out of the garage into the driveway just so that I could sweep up a little bit. But I haven't driven it. I just wanted to make sure the brakes worked. And I just needed to move the car, so we're going to take it on its first test drive. Let's go. You can tell so much about a car from its first test drive. Little things that you didn't really know that you needed to fix on it. Like, already the reverse indicator is off just a little bit. Well, it's 1-2 shift. And a 2-3, I think. Speedometer looks like it's working. Gas gauge works. Temp gauge is working. Looks like the ammeter is not working right now. That's okay. Those things never really worked anyway. Man, this thing is a boat. It is so power assisted. You can just steer with just the center hub. Alright, well, yeah, it made all of its shifts, and transmission actually feels like it's shifting really smooth. Brakes need a little work, even though I've gone through them, and maybe it's just me not being used to it, but it feels like there's a little bit of a dead spot, and then it's kind of touchy. I'm pretty sure I've got all the air out of it, but we'll just have to see. Once it gets a little warmer, we'll get on it some. So far, it's running really smooth. It has no power. Well, it has some power. For a big block, you would expect it to be a lot faster. But it is pushing, 4,400 pounds. Overall, everything's working, and it's driving, and it sounds good. Well, I think it's warmed up long enough. What do you say? Let's kick this pig. In the course of getting to this point, I've discovered a lot of little things, like the heating doesn't work very well. When we first got the car up and running, the heater seemed to work great, and then it stopped. It would just blow cold air out the defrost, and that's usually an indication of a vacuum line problem. So I started replacing all these vacuum lines, just kind of assuming that it was that. And wasn't working. Took the heater valve out, took it apart, and it looked fine. And I put a little vacuum on it, and it would open up and do what it was supposed to. And I could manually apply some vacuum to the heater, and it would start to work. So I think the next things that are going to be of importance here. The passenger side window doesn't roll up or down, so we've got to get that work. It sounds like the motor's spinning, so I wonder if the gears are broken or what. I just haven't looked at it. Car needs an alignment bad. It's pulling to the right pretty good right now. I don't think it's tire pressure. It may need. Maybe it's got a collapsed shock, or it's got a frozen shock on one side, and that's just pushing it that way. I know for sure the rear shocks are absolutely shot, so probably just go ahead and start working on suspension next. But really and truly, I just need to drive this thing. So all in all, it has been a wonderful first test drive on the 66 Thunderbird. It's doing exactly what I hoped it would do, which would be just come back alive and everything starts working again. Overall, I couldn't be happier with the way that the first test drive is going. There's a few things we need to work on, which I expected, but all in all, the car's working well. It's driving, the engine sounds good, the transmission works, the power steering works, and you know, for a car that sat for 30 years, I can't believe how well it's driving. So that's going to wrap it up for this episode. If you like what you see here, click on that subscribe button and hit the bell to be notified of any new videos that are coming out. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.